We already know rats ran the hidden highways of castles while nobles paraded lions through their courtyards. But how did people actually fight back against thousands of gnawing, disease-carrying guests? And what jaw-dropping disasters did those pedigreed pets unleash in glittering banquets where one wrong move could humiliate a monarch? In Part 5, we dive into the medieval rat war and the most unhinged tales from royal menageries. You'll see the full spectrum of pest control, from salaried cats and bounty tails to ferrets flushing vermin like furry torpedoes and owls patrolling rafters at midnight. Then we swing the door into the great halls, where cheetahs strolled past bedchambers, baboons sparked theological scandals, and an elephant burned a hole straight through a royal budget. 10 facts to prove court life was anything but calm, and that the true rulers of the keep were small, fast, and very hungry. No matter how lavish the tapestries or how polished the tiles, rats were the most numerous residents inside many castles. A single stronghold could harbor thousands, each exploiting crevices between stones and the warm voids under floorboards. They weren't just a nuisance, they were an existential threat. Rats raided grain stores, spoiled meat and cheese, and far worse, served as engines for epidemic disease that could silence a household faster than any siege. The castle kitchen was rodent paradise. Food prep happened at scale. Whole sides of beef, cauldrons of porridge, trays of pies cooling on slatted racks, every spill and crumb a summons. Architecture helped the enemy. Thick rubble cores inside walls, plank floors with generous gaps, and service passages zigzagging behind the scenes formed invisible expressways. By day, you rarely saw more than a blur. By night, the blur owned the place, and when the scullions dozed, the whiskers voted with their teeth. To push back against rising numbers, households needed predators, discipline, and a bit of payroll creativity because the first line of defense wore a collar and expected payment in fish heads. Cats were the default anti-rat technology. Big castles kept them by the dozen, not as mascots, but as working staff with sleeping corners near larders and bakehouses. They roamed after curfew, threading rafters and stalking along buttery shelves, treating the castle's acoustics like sonar. Everyone learned to step lightly and keep lids tight. The cats did the rest. Records from London's great fortress traditions even mention a formalized rat catcher at court, often styled with droll respect, the sort of title that says, "Your job is humble but indispensable." In effect, there was a yeoman warder of the cats, a human supervisor for the whiskered workforce. Payment was simple and medieval. Room, board, scraps, and steady praise, fish heads, offal bits, warm rushes by the hearth. In a world where work meant survival, a good mouser was a minor celebrity, and a mother cat with a thriving litter was an investment that paid out every dusk. Cats, however, were only one squad in a multi-species response. When rats melted into holes too tight for a paw, the garrison deployed a different shape of predator, long, flexible, and very determined. Some castles trained ferrets to flush rats from places cats couldn't reach behind oven backs, inside timber chases, and through the hollow hearts of walls. Handlers slipped the ferret into a crack, blocked other exits with sacks, and waited for the panicked bolt. What emerged met the business end of a stick, a net, or a cat already coiled to pounce. It was brutal, efficient, and repeated nightly. Above the beams, owls worked the graveyard shift. Kept in dovecote-like niches or simply tolerated inside high roofs, they haunted the rafters and clicked their beaks at any movement. Their silent flight made them uncanny roommates. One moment you stared at a candle gutter, the next a shadow folded around a squeal. Owls took birds and rats indiscriminately, and they didn't ask permission to hunt over a noble's head. Kitchens cleaned at dusk. The aerial patrol clocked in. Even with cats, ferrets, and owls on the roster, the numbers were grim. Rats win by arithmetic, speed, litters, and a willingness to risk everything for a crumb. That's why castles paired claws with coin, because when biology overwhelms, bureaucracy follows. Rats breed on a schedule that laughs at human plans. Under the right conditions, one pair can explode into a family tree with roughly 2,000 descendants in a year. That kind of curve makes traps feel like thimbles catching a tide. If the pantry leaked one night out of 7, the ledger still went red. So, some lords paid bounties coin for proof, which usually meant tails. A steward kept a box and a tally. Servants pooled efforts. Children of the household made games out of who could claim the slickest prize. Ratcatcher appeared next to Scullion and Groom in lists of domestic roles, and a seasoned hand might note it on a humble resume alongside polishes blades and keeps the embers. The economy of vermin turned on a simple loop: tails in, coin out, fewer whiskers tomorrow maybe. And yet, where rats and humans share a stage, comedy arrives uninvited. All it takes is one lightning-fast blur under a high table to turn a coronation supper into a farce. Sometimes the only missile at hand was the most symbolic object in the room. One of the great "you can't make this up" court stories tells of a French king whose coronation feast was rudely interrupted by a rat scuttling over the royal carpet. Reflex beat decorum. He snatched up his crown and hurled it fastball royalty. The rodent slipped the strike. The crown did not. It clipped a bishop's head with the precision of a celestial joke, baptizing the man with pomp and pain in equal measure. The rat vanished. The bishop retired with a headache and a tale that outlived him. The banquet rippled with stifled laughter no etiquette book could smother. In an instant, vermin had turned rank into slapstick and reduced majesty to a man holding a dented cymbal. Castles promised control. Rats specialized in reminding everyone that control is rented, not owned. After the laughter, life resumed. Only now the conversation drifted from rats to the other animals inside the walls, the ones nobles invited on purpose. Those, too, could rearrange a room's dignity silently, quickly, and with claws. Aristocrats collected exotic animals to project reach. Lions, leopards, and clever little monkeys were status made flesh. The message was simple: our alliances and coffers bring the world to heel. Many of these creatures lived outside in pens, but privileged specimens slept under roofs, special rooms set aside inside the keep where keepers could feed, clean, and soothe. One highborn lady famously kept a cheetah as a companion and allowed it to roam between chambers on a long, elegant leash, or no leash at all when temper hers or the cat's permitted. Imagine turning a corner with a tray of pastries to meet a spot-streaked blur eyeing your wrists like curiosities. Servants learned to announce themselves loudly and never run. Nobles learned to act as if a predator at one's heel were a natural accessory. The cheetah didn't read rank, it read movement. Live with a lion, and you inherit its gravity. But some pets caused trouble that reached beyond pulse and fur, right into the theology of the household chapel. Monkeys were fashionable playthings at court, quick with fingers and quicker with mischief. Larger primates, baboons, with their heavy brows and startling strength, might be kept on chains in a great hall as conversation pieces, a flex of exotic taste that doubled as a dare to common sense. At one storied castle, a baboon watched the chaplain too closely for too long and learned to mimic the blessing, the hand posture, the rhythm, even a rasped approximation of the words. When it performed the act at the worst possible moment before an audience already primed to take symbols seriously, the hall detonated into gasps. Some laughed until they feared for their souls. Some crossed themselves against blasphemy. The clergy did not smile. It wasn't a theological debate so much as a crisis in optics. When your pet can grant benedictions, who exactly is in charge? Even without scandal, exotic animals were budgets with teeth. Feed them, house them, keep them warm, and watch the winter tally eat through your silver like frost through a garden. Royal menageries were logistical machines. Carnivores needed flesh every day, not a poetic promise. Straw had to be hauled, pens mucked, doors reinforced. Keepers built schedules around hunger and weather, sleeping by cages and waking to a chorus of needs that ignored holidays. In summer, odor advertised power. In winter, wind turned pride into guilt. Cold chewed bones the way debt chewed purse strings. One ruler accepted an elephant as a diplomatic gift and ordered a bespoke shelter, thick walls to blunt the wind, broad doors to accommodate dignity. For 2 winters, teams scrambled to keep water unfrozen and hay dry, but latitude won. The elephant died, a failure of geography rather than affection, and a public reminder that bragging rights can become memorials. A ledger line turned into a cautionary tale. Your reach has limits, asked the climate. Still, once a court tasted spectacle, it escalated. If you can feed a lion, why not keep a crocodile? If peacocks gild your lawns by day, why not gild your banquets with them by night? There are accounts of crocodiles housed in special chambers with water features, part shrine, part threat display. Imagine a guided tour with a straight face. To your left, the royal throne. To your right, a predator from the Nile whose smile discourages questions. Whether they were fed offal or imported fish, they were fed theatrically, because the point was to make visitors swallow the idea that your household extended to rivers they'd never see. The presence of such animals changed behavior. Children kept closer to hems. Guards carried spears with a new awareness of which end mattered. Servants developed a sixth sense for when the water should be left alone. Even a silent crocodile rearranged the castle's choreography. Status is a stage, and predators are set pieces that move themselves. Prestige didn't stop at living displays. In the kitchen, beauty and menace met in edible art, especially when peacocks were involved. Peacocks strutted across castle yards like living fireworks. Their feathers hung in windows, crowned helmets, and framed portraits, but their most theatrical moment came at table. Cooks roasted the bird, then reclothed it in its own plumage, reattaching the fan so it appeared alive as it arrived, a trophy of color and craft that turned dinner into pageant. Flavor took second place to spectacle. The point was to stun the eyes and prove the kitchen could stage magic with knives and pins. Service of such dishes was a coordinated dance. Drummers signaled, torches flared, a carver advanced like a herald. Guests gasped, then leaned in, half for taste and half for proof that what shimmered was food and not conjuring. This was medieval plating, a union of butchery and costume that said, "We command nature even on a platter." And while the hall cheered, a cat might slip under the trestles with a rat clamped in its jaws, returning the room to reality with a thump. Court life, seen from the doorway, was glory. Seen from the floorboards and rafters, it was negotiation between predators and prey, pride and plague, firelight and teeth. From salaried mousers to midnight owls, from bounty tails to ferrets shoved like living locksmiths into wall cracks, the medieval rat war never truly ended. And while castles flaunted power with cheetahs in corridors, baboons practicing blessings, crocodiles blinking in man-made pools, and peacocks refeathered for dinner theater, reality kept score with smells, scratches, and sudden screams. We've reached 50 facts, and one theme roars under them all. Control is a performance. Nature always has a speaking role. Next episode, we step into the medieval armory, the skull-popping warhammer, the chaotic chain flail, and the cunning geometry of weapons that made armor both salvation and trap. Share this with a friend who still thinks royal life was tidy. Comment below. Would you rather share a corridor with a cheetah or 1,000 rats? Tap subscribe with the bell so you don't miss Part 6. The stones are listening and the cats are on the clock.
Well done. That's one less mouth to feed.